Okay, so here we are on presentation number 2. So I believe this is where we left off, that energy is flowing from a form from potential energy to kinetic energy to potential energy, keeping in mind that when energy changes form, it's never 100% efficient, that there's always some energy that's lost in the form of heat. And for you and I, that heat is not really necessarily lost energy. It's necessary to keep us in a warm state of environment, 98.6 degrees. Remember, we are warm-blooded animals, and one of the benefits for this heat is that by maintaining a warm environment, you and I are able to undergo chemistry at the speed in which is necessary to support our 3 trillion cells. So as we saw a couple times in the lab, chemistry tends to happen much faster in a warm environment because heat is kinetic energy. It causes molecules to move faster and allows for chemical reactions to take place quicker as they basically bump into each other, bombard each other at a faster rate. So I don't know if we would call it lost energy, but still, when energy changes from one form to another, it's never 100% efficient. There's always some heat that's going to be produced. Okay, so energy flows through ecosystems, meaning that it will flow from plants to animals. That's from one ecosystem, a plant ecosystem, to an animal ecosystem. Ultimately, the energy is coming from sunlight. That sunlight strikes the chloroplasts that are located in the leaves of plant cells. We saw those numerous times with our microscopes. When the energy hits the chloroplasts are able to take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and water from coming up from the soil through their roots, and they're able to convert that into sugar. They're taking something that is highly unorganized and they're organizing it into a 6-ring sugar molecule. So in order to do that, that requires energy. So that energy is coming from the sunlight. Plants produce the sugar. They don't need the oxygen. The oxygen diffuses out of their leaves into the atmosphere. You and I eat that sugar, breathe that oxygen, and in our mitochondria, we will then extract the energy back out of those sugar molecules. The energy that we extract out is in the form of a molecule called ATP. So in doing so, we are literally taking the hydrogens back off of the sugar so that our sugar molecule gets turned back into carbon dioxide, which then we exhale, that goes back into plants. So literally the sugar that you are eating today, the carbon in the sugar that you're eating today, was once carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that plants have turned into sugar. So producers and consumers, I know you're familiar with these topics or the definitions. Producers are those that are able to make their own food. Consumers are not able to make their own food. They rely on producers for their energy source. So, photosynthesis. We've covered photosynthesis a little bit in the lab, and so we just want to continue to work on that a little bit more so that we're really familiar with what's going on here. Plants take in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and if you look at your lab, I think it was the last lab we did before you left, you looked at the cross-section of a leaf, and in that cross-section you were able to see the stomata, the openings on the bottom surface of the leaves, where carbon dioxide is able to enter into the plant. water, which is coming up through the roots of the plants and then moving through their veins, is also necessary. So here's the balanced equation. It takes 6 carbon dioxides and 6 water molecules. And nothing is created or destroyed. And so when I look at the products here on this reaction, then I should be able to find the same amount of starting material. The carbon dioxide, these 6 carbon dioxides, those 6 carbons that are in there are represented by these 6 carbons right here. So the carbon dioxide is literally being turned into sugar. When I look at the sugar molecule, it has 12 hydrogens on it. Those 12 hydrogens come from these 6 water molecules. So if I'm looking at the sugar and tracking the sugar, then what I see is photosynthesis could be described simply as a plant's ability to remove hydrogens from water molecule and place them onto carbon dioxide. And in doing so, they create sugar. They're moving the hydrogens from water onto carbon dioxide. And keep in mind that when these hydrogens move, they take along with them their electrons. And there is the energy. Energy, electricity, it is the movement of electrons. So energy supplied from the sun is converted into movement of electrons from water onto carbon dioxide. And there it is. So there's our energy right there. So photosynthesis produces a sugar. It also produces oxygen. That's the oxygen from the water right there. Those oxygens, when the hydrogens are gone, those oxygens unite to form oxygen O2. The plant doesn't need O2, so the O2 comes out through those stomata and enters into the atmosphere. Cellular respiration, which is also covered in today's lecture, is basically just the opposite. You and I eating the sugar, breathing this oxygen, getting energy out from that sugar, and we will produce carbon dioxide that we exhale, and we will produce water that also comes out in your breath. So we will just literally turn this arrow going the other direction. But for right now, we're still working on photosynthesis. So as you know, it takes place inside the chloroplasts. They're a complicated structure. They consist of what is called thylakoids. So these little stacks of pancakes, each one of those is called a thylakoid. They look like little pancakes in there. That's where the chlorophyll is actually located, is inside the membrane of those thylakoids. One huge stack, if I took this whole thing and talked about this whole thing right here, that one huge stack is called a grana. But for all intents and purposes, that's not so important, the terminology. But these are called thylakoids, each one of these. And that's where the chlorophyll molecule that's going to do all of this magical work is located inside the thylakoid membrane. Then there's this space in the chloroplast around the thylakoids. This is called the stroma. And so photosynthesis is going to take place partly inside the thylakoid and partly out here inside this space called the stroma. When they capture that light's energy and they build the sugar molecule, keep in mind that, again, they don't need the oxygen, they just want those hydrogens, that's what they're going to move. And so the oxygen forms together to produce oxygen as a byproduct. And that's what you and I breathe. So Photosynthesis converts solar energy into chemical energy. Producers and consumers are only able to release this chemical energy through a process of cellular respiration. Cellular respiration allows plants and animals to power life. So the potential energy that is in the form of a chemical bond, now called sugar, is converted into chemical energy, another chemical bond. And that chemical bond is called ATP, or that chemical molecule, that biological molecule is called ATP. So here's cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is basically how you and I rebuild our energy. So you know how energy is used. You use it to move your muscles. You use it in active transport. You're breaking down your ATP and turning it back into ADP and free phosphate. Cellular respiration is the process by which we take that ADP plus the free phosphate and turn it back into ATP. So ATP is cellular energy. But before we get there, just a little bit more about photosynthesis. Why do most plants that we see every day look green? We played around with that a little bit in lab, so you might want to take a look at your lab again. That's where you were using the spectroscope, and we were shining light onto the leaf and looking at what colors were being absorbed, which colors were being reflected. The organelle that we're dealing with is the chloroplast inside our plant cell. The chloroplasts, like I said, are pretty complex. The whole stack of those thylakoids is called a grana. So granum, if you're talking about one, grana, if I'm talking about a whole bunch of them. This space in which they are located is called the stroma. So this outside space here is the stroma. You saw the guard cells using your microscope and the stomata. So the stomata is the actual opening where gas exchange takes place. So notice this is where the carbon dioxide is going inside. This is where the oxygen is going to come out when it's, a byproduct of the process. The water is entering through the roots. Okay. So I'm going to just kind of pass by this so we can talk about the actual reaction itself. So on your that homework review sheet, I've asked you to again take a look at this whole idea of light. Which light is being used? Which light is being reflected? So be sure that at some point you're able to tell me which colors of lights are actually driving photosynthesis. The plant is using them. It's driving the reaction. And which light is not. It's just being reflected. So, and in fact, green and yellow is used to a small amount, but not a whole lot. So here's a video, you guys, that you could stop this video and take a look at. It's pretty cool. It's a good one on photosynthesis and light. I thought you might enjoy it. It's linked into your, in the module, you'll see video links. So here's the first video link. So I'm just about out of time on this particular slideshow. So I'll start working on the next one. Now would be a good time for you to take a break and watch this YouTube. Right? See you in a few minutes.